Welcome into the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast presented by SeatGeek, a podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from those who cover the NBA on a daily basis.
Back to CJ, pop another three. Oh! Rumble, young man. Straight away. Rumble. Heat check at the best possible time.
The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Welcome to the Pelicans Podcast presented by SeatGeek. I am Joe Cardosi, joined by the strapping Jim Eichenhofer. Jimothy, man, you are just a man about town. You got some gym interviews, a gym exclusive that we're going to have later after that huge must-win for the Pels that they did win. And our guest today is going to be Mr. John DeShazier, who is back on the radio calls here at home. He is cancer-free. So glad that the man is back in town and on the call in the games, brings such a great energy, and we just love him. He has been awesome. Jim, it seems like our mood, whether or not we're on antidepressants, you can almost tell by the thing. We just got to claw our way into the play-in, or we're getting that 6th seed, baby. Boy, today I feel like I can maybe cut my hair a little bit. The Alfred Payton hair may not happen.
Yeah, I'm with you on the point about the mood swinging. I mean, I think just that win Wednesday, as crazy as it might sound, has definitely uplifted people around here. I think people are feeling a lot better about things when you – I mean, it was a win that they badly needed to be able to do that against Dallas and get a win against Kyrie and Luka and hold them down offensively, at least for the first 3 quarters, was big. And then if you look at the developments from around the West, including a lot of teams that are very relevant to the Pelicans in the standings, it is amazing to think about the difference between Monday night, that game ends in Sacramento. I probably shouldn't even brought that up again. Then now after that win Wednesday and then going into this weekend with 2 also very significant opponents, it is funny. I personally, I mean, I do feel a lot better about the picture overall, and it just took 1 win to do that.
Look, that's the state of the West, especially right now. You look at, we're going to get into it with John DeShazier a little later, so I don't want to get into it too much here, but man, the Grizzlies dealing with a lot. The Suns with that Kevin Durant turned ankle during warm-ups, the Luka situation with the Mavs, and honestly, just the way they've been playing, even when he's on the floor. I don't know, if you're a hopeful Pelicans fan, which I hope you still are, there's a lot to look forward to, especially in this upcoming stretch. Once again, we're going to get into it with JD, but man, this home stretch and these road games after, I feel like this pretty much defines the season.
It really could. I mean, I think this homestand could be something that we look back at when the regular season is over and say that this was a turning point. Hopefully that we say that in a positive way as far as it being a turning point. But I mean, this weekend, specifically to can you get into the play-in tournament? This weekend is massive because you're playing Oklahoma City and Portland, 2 of the teams that are right behind you in the standings.
Nipping at our heels.
Utah's the other one that is kind of a threat in terms of they're in 11th place right now. Pelicans don't get to play them again the rest of the season, but
kind of glad.
That's definitely a scoreboard watch though, the Jazz, because you know that it would help the Pelicans a lot for them to not be in the equation. Anytime they're in there and there's a tiebreaker, Pelicans went 0-3 against them, so that's very negative. But anyways, that's the situation as far as if you're just trying to finish in the top 10. I mean, you couldn't pick a bigger weekend than what the Pelicans are facing right now. And also, to your point about the Grizzlies and the Mavericks situation, it's interesting if you look at the schedule. They play each other 3 times over the next week and a half. And on one hand, you say okay, from the Mavericks' perspective, they might have a chance to miss Ja Morant in all of those games, which is a huge break. But the Mavs aren't going to have Luka, so the Grizzlies are going to miss playing against him. So it's funny. I think those games are going to be really fascinating and very important to not just the Pelicans, but a bunch of other teams as far as what is Dallas going to do if they have to play a bunch of games without Luka, which it looks like based on the reports that he's going to be out for a while.
So I saw the MRI was clean, but he's still going to be missing some time. So it's going to be interesting to see what that team is, and it's been weird. The Mavs have been like a get right team for the Pelicans. Some of the best wins of the season have been against the Mavs.
No doubt.
That early in the season when the Pels were just having to trot out the bench. Against the Mavs, that big win I think felt like a turning point for us in terms of momentum. And this win right here at home, I feel like it was another turning point where when you saw BI go off the floor, it's like, oh no. Even without Luka, for them.
Sure.
I mean, it was worrisome because we're already shorthanded. And, CJ had not been red hot the whole game. He turned it on in the fourth quarter, but when
phenomenal
BI
fourth
went out
quarter.
and you were just worried about that thumb with CJ and he's going to have to be the main guy, and man, what a win. And again, to your point, it just feels like everything is with a fresh set of eyes now.
Sure. And, I think we're the last team in the NBA that should be, showing sympathy for other teams' injuries.
Yeah.
But I think with Luka specifically, if you watch the way he was running around the court and you watch some of the things that have been hampering him lately, they probably really should take a look at sitting him for a while.
No,
just
he
to
was
make sure
wrapped
that
up
he's
like a
getting
mummy
right.
before he even went
Yeah.
out there. I mean, they had his thigh wrapped up before the game.
Right. And I'm not just saying that because obviously it benefits the Pelicans if the Mavs lose a bunch of games. But I mean, that's definitely a situation that they're going to have to figure out how to deal with. But yeah, I mean, I think the situation with the Pelicans and the Mavericks specifically took a big turn in terms of the Pelicans' chances just based on great win, but they also tied the season series with them. I mentioned how Mavericks have a bunch of games against Memphis. The next tiebreaker after the 2-2 head-to-head tie is division record. So that could be huge as well because obviously Memphis, you could lose a couple or three of those games and then all of a sudden Pelicans have that as well. So, I mean, looking at a bunch of teams, but I'm also very specifically looking at Dallas, especially after what happened Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we don't want to make you think that we didn't do a podcast on Wednesday because we were avoiding the Zion thing. It was an early game. We had some scheduling conflict stuff that got mixed up. But the Zion update, it did get handed down. We should talk about it. We've all been waiting for it. It was like Christmas morning, and then it came, and sort of like getting coal in your stocking a little bit. But Zion will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. Not great news, not terrible news. Last thing you wanted to hear was, okay, we're shutting him down. He's going to need a procedure. Now it sounds like he's progressing. Now 2 weeks, that sounds like a lot, especially in this stretch where, seems like we really need him. But look, a lot of teams are dealing with injuries. Look at the Grizzlies atop the West. They got no Ja. Brandon Clark's out for the season. Looks like Steven Adams might be out for the season. He's out
for the rest of the regular season.
4 weeks.
Yep.
And then you got the Suns with Durant. He's going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. You got Luka and the Mavs. Everyone's getting banged up. And so 2 weeks sounds like a lot, but that might be right when you need him the most and everyone else is still banged up and you got Zion back.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it is hopefully that he'll be able to get back, and it would be great if he can finish off the regular season and play at the tail end. But in some ways, based on the stuff that you just detailed, it's almost like you could look at it like we're kind of on even playing field with some of these other teams now.
Yeah.
Like everyone is dealing with something very similar where they have a very key, crucial guy on the injured list right now who they're hoping to be back within the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. So it's kind of even things out a little bit, at least specific to Zion and some of the other star players in the West.
Yeah, so that's hopeful. But what was hopeful about that game also was just seeing some of our own players play the way we know they can. Herb Jones had a great game. He was actually hitting some shots, played great defense. CJ McCollum absolutely taking over in the fourth, being the red-hot CJ that we need in the clutch situations there. And, it was great to see Dyson Daniels at the 1. It was great to see him running the point. Great to see him back playing good minutes. And you actually got a gym exclusive with Dyson Daniels. How lucky for Dyson Daniels.
Indeed. What a career highlight that was for him to get a Pelicans.com.
Hope someone got a picture.
And no one did. I was shooing away all of the celebrity
paparazzos.
Yes, exactly. No, it was great to talk to him, and something that I spoke with him about too was I didn't even realize this as I was watching the game that he had 6 rebounds and 6 assists until I looked at the box score. But like you just mentioned, he got to play some point guard. He got to kind of distribute, set people up.
Yeah.
Herb Jones was fantastic, like you said, both ends of the floor. He may have had a game or two that I'm not remembering now that was better or more impactful than Wednesday, but I'm not sure. That might have been the best game he's had this year.
We needed every point in that game, it felt like, and just Herb, to see him making shots just for his own confidence, just to see him playing the basketball at a level that we know he can play at. CJ, too. It just seems like maybe they got their swagger back. A lot of what these dry spells, it just seems to get in everyone's heads because it's been team-wide. To see all of them playing well, maybe it just gels them together moving forward in this homestand. It just, even BI on the bench, biting Jose. That was one of my favorite moments of the season, and we're hoping that BI is okay. We're going to find out in a little bit, but it just seems like their attitude is good. They are playing well, and maybe they got their groove back.
You know what Wednesday's game reminded me too, as well as a lot of last season, in terms of Herb was so big last season in some of the biggest games, the biggest moments. He had a great playoffs against Phoenix, just came through, which he did against the Mavericks the other night. When you needed him to play well, he had, like I said, maybe his best performance of the season. CJ also had a huge play-in game last year against the Spurs. Had some other moments in the stretch run that helped them when BI was out with the injury that he had in March and April of last season. Without CJ, you don't make the play-in tournament. So that was big for him to do what he did in the fourth quarter. And one of the things that I also talked about with Dyson Daniels in this Jim exclusive, was for both CJ and Herb. I thought it was great that I noticed this in the first quarter that Herb was picking up Luka Doncic 80 feet from the basket, getting in his face. The Mavs would inbound the ball to Luka at the other free throw line, and Herb would be standing right there in his face, which was cool to see. Yeah. Not surprising, he's done that before, but we also saw CJ doing that against Kyrie Irving, where he would pick him up deep in the backcourt. That's not something that CJ does a ton, but it seemed like it was a really effective part of the game plan of Dallas relies so heavily on those two guys that if we can make them work for everything, if we can really run them, and with the condition that Luka was in, I think that was even a better strategy or more effective way to go about the game, because he looked worn down quickly. By the second quarter, he looked like he was dragging his leg and dragging himself up and down the court. So
it was rough.
So that was one of the things that Dyson Daniels talked about, was just how well the Pelicans played defense and some of the things that they did to make it tough on Dallas's two stars, who neither of whom had good games in terms of efficiency shooting-wise. The other thing, too, I should mention before this clip is at one point Dyson randomly mentions how one of the most important things for Dyson to do is to get the ball to people like Herb, and that was because Herb kind of just walked by in the background. I didn't see Herb, so I'm not sure if Herb gave him a look or he just kind of nodded towards him.
Because if you're listening, you're like, what, you mean the spot-up shooter, Herb Jones? So that's because Herb Jones passed by. Let's get to this exclusive Jim interview with Dyson Daniels.
I think one of the things that stood out when you look at the box score of this game is, I know you guys focus on trying to slow down Kyrie and Luka. They both had numbers, but they took a lot of shot attempts. What did you think of just the job that you guys were able to do against them defensively?
Yeah, our game plan was just to wear them down. They're great players. They're going to get the ball. They're going to make shots. It's just to make life tough on them and then tire them out. Obviously, I think, we had Herb, started on Luka, and, I think CJ was on Kyrie. So those guys did a really good job of, wearing them down, making them take tough shots. And, that's the engine for their team. So they're going to make shots, but you just got to, make sure they're tough and, make sure we wear them down.
You mentioned Herb's defense. What did you think about the impact that he made overall? It just seemed like this was one of his best games of the season.
No, for sure. Herb's, a great player, not just on the defensive end, the offensive end as well. He knows the spots to get to. He's a great cutter. He's been shooting the ball pretty well lately, and he's rebounding the ball as well really well. So just seeing him have an impact on both ends of the floor, because he's always been doing it on the defensive end. He's evolving offensive player, and it's really helping our team.
Yeah, he had 4 offensive rebounds. It seemed like he scrapped for all of them. None of them were easy. He had to kind of battle with a couple guys every time for those. How do you describe what CJ was able to do in the last 3 or 4 minutes of the game?
Man, he just put our team on the back. They made a run. They made some threes, and CJ has put us on his back and went to work. And when you're feeling it, you're feeling it. And CJ was feeling it, so it was good to see. He make 4 or 5 threes in a row, however many it was. It was great to see.
I think one of the underrated things when you look at this game too that might have kind of gone under the radar was, you were plus 21 in your plus minus, and you had 6 rebounds and 6 assists. Sometimes people just look at scoring. What did you think? Obviously you're trying to get back into the rhythm after you had been out for a while. What did you think of how you played tonight and contributed?
Yeah, I think I played pretty well. Just making the right play. Coming off screens. Their low man was in a lot, so the shake-up pass was there. A few times the lob was on. So for me, it's just about making reads, making sure that I bring my defensive intensity every game. And coach wanted me to run the second unit today, so it was good for me to play with the ball in my hands and dish it out a little bit. So.
You were consistently in the rotation contributing for the first bunch of months of the season, but then you had the ankle injury and you were out for a month or so. Is that something that you've ever experienced before, as far as having to be out that long with the injury?
I mean, that's basketball. Sometimes you're in, sometimes you're not. It can be tough to come straight off an injury and start playing minutes and have your rhythm back. So, we're in a tough stretch. We wanted to win games, and we're still in a tough stretch. So we need to make sure that we're putting our best unit out there. That going to go out there and get it done. And I understand that I just come off an injury and I wasn't playing well, so I got to earn my spot back in the rotation. But for me, it's just about bringing it every night. Bringing the effort, the intensity, and getting the ball to people like Herb.
I mean, do you feel like you're progressing physically from the injury, that you're back to being 100% or close to 100% from what you?
Yeah, for sure. Every game I'm getting better. Just my lateral movement. That's probably the last thing that comes with an ankle injury, and I'm starting to feel good moving laterally. Guarding Curry, it's a lot of moving laterally tonight. So it's good to make sure that I'm just feeling 100% out there, moving well, and I am feeling good.
Last thing, I know you went through kind of something similar to an NBA schedule in terms of travel and stuff like that in the G League, but I mean, what's it been like? For example, you guys just had a stretch where you had one home game in a month. I mean, what's it been like just adjusting to all the travel and just being? I mean, you must be happy to finally be able to kind of get settled back home and unpack.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough. The NBA schedule's tough. You can have 2 weeks at home, and you can have 2 weeks on the road. So for us, our schedule's been tough lately. We've been on the road playing some good teams. So. It's good to be at home, just to settle in my own bed, get some familiar food and stuff like that. So, it was a tough stretch for us, and we're in a tough patch right now where we need to win games to put ourselves in a good position to make a playoff run. And I'm happy with how we started off tonight. Hopefully, we can turn things around.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Great stuff from Dyson Daniels with Mr. Jim Eichenhofer. You were roving about because he wasn't the only one. Trey Murphy, he had himself a good game. That double clutch dunk made me hop out of my chair.
It was great.
I love that he carried that over from the dunk contest. So man, and he was fouled on that. Should have gotten there. But anyway, it was great to see Trey Murphy have a good game too, because he's been struggling a little bit as of late, and it's good to see the kid get his groove back.
I thought he set the tone with not just his dunks that he had in the first half or earlier in the game, but just the way that he played overall. I think he contributed to the defense as well. It's always fun talking to Trey because I think Trey actually enjoys the challenge of trying to come up with something funny or some unique response to even some of the most mundane questions.
He's a funny dude.
He or some of the other reporters have for him. But yeah, Trey starts talking about, at the beginning of this clip, he starts talking about how CJ, incredible fourth quarter. He had 16 points. A bunch of those were in the last couple minutes when Dallas made the run, and things were starting to get a little nervous. Mm-hmm. It was getting a little nerve-wracking.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, the guy who's probably accomplished the most in the NBA, been to the playoffs a million times, has a goal of trying to be there now 10 years in a row if the Pelicans can get in this year. But Trey basically just gives his succinct description of what CJ McCollum was able to do in the last few minutes of that game. How do you describe what CJ did in the last 3 minutes of the game or so?
In about 2 words, very tough. Very tough. He was in shots like he's supposed to. That's the CJ McCollum that I know, and he brought us there in the clutch, and I was very, very happy for him.
What did you think of the team defense? Obviously they broke out a little bit in the fourth quarter, but they only had 65 points through 3 quarters, and they've averaged 120 something lately. Mm-hmm. What did you think about just your guys' defense against them?
It was just all collective effort, and guys were just contesting, and that's a good team out there, so they're gonna hit shots eventually. So you just got to withstand those runs and play together as a team.
Do you feel like you did a good job of making Luke and Kyrie work harder for their shots, they didn't have efficient games?
Absolutely. We picked them up full, just pestered them, denied them the ball, all that stuff. So it was very, very effective.
Great stuff from Trey Murphy. Actually, in his post-game interview with our own Aaron Summers, he had waved CJ off. He was trying to cool him down for his TV interview, and he said in our radio interview, he's like, I don't know who that other guy was, but I know this CJ. That's my CJ. So he even talked about CJ's dry spell and sort of addressed it, and it was great to see CJ just come alive and basically carry us to the finish line in the fourth. You should know, our own Todd Graffinini never wavered, never got nervous. He was just a rock.
Oh, good to hear.
Yeah,
that's good to hear.
yeah.
We're making progress, not just in the standings and in the win column, but in the radio booth as well.
Unflappable, that guy.
Excellent.
But yeah, no, it was a great win. We needed it. It did get nerve-wracking there, but it was great to get. Hey, let's get to Mr. John DeShazier. He is back in the radio booth for our home games. He is once again cancer-free. We want to applaud the man. Let's open up the studio doors and let in your radio color analyst. So glad to have him back, Mr. John DeShazier. Joining us on the Pelicans podcast, it is the return of the Mac, cancer-free, Mr. John DeShazier. Man, I'm so glad to hear the good news, and I'm even gladder almost to have you back in the saddle.
2 sweet words, cancer-free.
Yes.
I was waiting on those, and I was really glad to hear them. And then, of course, you get the clearance to go back to doing the things that you are accustomed to doing, which is, work. If you want to calling games work. But yeah, just to be able for the doctor to say, look, get back to life, get back to doing what you normally do, was a big relief. So, man, it was a huge sigh of relief. Good to get back on the broadcast. Better to get back on the win.
Yeah, and I think it's the John DeShazier thing, man. You're back on the broadcast. They did it for the Gipper here. They did it for the Jipper, if it's John DeShazier.
Yeah.
You got to say. So, man, that was a huge win. Jim and I were talking about it a little earlier. It just felt like the whole atmosphere just around the building, even on Twitter, where it really matters, we all know. It's changed, man. It just seems like the atmosphere is different around the team.
I always say, I never call a game a must-win until it's an elimination game, and if you lose that game, you're eliminated from the playoff. I always say that. They needed that game Wednesday.
Yeah.
They needed that game. Losing 6 out of the last 7 and, floundering from the All-Star break. They needed that game. They needed something to feel good about. And kind of the way they got it uplifts you because, you don't expect Brandon Ingram to twist his ankle and not be able to not finish the game, not play the second half. And then C.J. McCollum to give you 16 straight in the fourth to basically put the team on his back and carry the team. They needed to figure out a way to win. They figured out a way to win. And that's kind of the way it's going to be. I mean, you just got to figure out how to do it because we don't know what's up with B.I.'s ankle. Hopefully, knock wood, that's only going to be a game, maybe no games, but we don't necessarily know. But they're just going to have to figure out how to stitch it together and win some games while they don't have him, and, of course, while they don't have Zion. They just got to figure it out. And so, man, Wednesday was a huge relief. They needed something to stop the bleeding.
Did you see some similarities to maybe what we saw in the end of last season in terms of the regular season and then obviously the Phoenix series as well in terms of, CJ so clutch in the fourth quarter? Herb, it seemed like he had one of his best games of the season, both ends of the floor. I mean, did you feel like? I feel like for a lot of people, that's what what we want to see and what we've been looking for is the team playing without Zion, just repeating kind of what they did during the stretch run of last season.
Absolutely, they looked like they had some juice, and Herb, I think, has just been kind of searching this season, like trying to find out where he fits, and he's just been a little bit off kilter. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who moves without the ball. He needs to do that. He's not a catch and shoot 3 guy from the corner. I know that shot's wide open for him. There's a reason that shot's wide open for him. But when he's moving, when he's active, that's the best version of him, and that's the guy that you look at and say, you know what? That's the first team all defensive guy right there. That's a guy who's active, who makes life miserable for the opposing team. So having him do that and just having, Naji Marshall, you just saw the juice in those guys.
Yeah.
And then it got to the clutch situation, and they didn't fold, which is, unfortunately something that we've seen a few times this season, where they got in that clutch and CJ said, okay, I ain't going to let you lose tonight. I don't know what's going to happen the next night, but tonight we ride, and we will not lose this game. And so you needed that because he is your legitimate guy who you expect that out of him. You got to be able to count on these guys and get your production out of them down the stretch. When Willie Green says it's go time, that to me means it's consistency time. There's no time for dips. Everybody, all hands on deck, and you got to do what you do every game so that you don't, well, you know what, man, this guy, he gives you 15 this game, but he gave you 8 the next game.
Yeah.
And then he gives you 3 the next game, and then he jumps back up to 18. No. It's got to be that 14 or 15 straight across so you know exactly what you're getting. So hopefully they have kind of found that mode.
Yeah, and that's what's been nice to see is in that game you saw CJ come back alive. You saw Trey Murphy have a good game. And Trey Murphy's one of those dudes that has been inconsistent as of late. He'll have a great game and then just brutal from three-point. It just seems like he got his confidence back. And a lot of players that haven't been in the rotation have been getting minutes. You saw Dyson Daniels out there getting some good minutes at the point guard position. You've seen Kyra Lewis getting some run, more Jaxson Hayes minutes than I think a lot of people may have expected. What have you seen out of the players that have been getting these minutes, and how do you think it might contribute when we have our full squad back and they are able to come off the bench and not be crucial, integral players that we need right now? How much do you think that's going to help down the stretch?
I'll tell you, if you can get Jaxson Hayes to play like this all the time, like he's played the last 3-4 games, you wouldn't have those moments where he's banished to the bench for 10, 12, 15
Something about
games or whatever.
spring Jaxson.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but if you could just get this version of him, which to me isn't asking like something ridiculous. It's not like they're saying, okay, go out in the corner and shoot 3 threes. They're just saying, be athletic, be lengthy, run, be active, get some offensive rebounds, fill the lane, catch some lobs, things that he is fully capable of doing. If you can get that version of him all the time, he can stay on the court and be really, really effective. But because he can't get consistent
He's been
minutes.
defending competently in these games too, which has been helpful.
Well, he's got all the tools that you would want. He's a longer, or could be a longer, Larry Nance, because he should be able to switch 1 to 5 and guard people.
He's got the athleticism.
Yeah, and guard people, and hopefully not foul on the perimeter. Just challenge it, but not foul people on the perimeter. He's in a more athletic version of Larry. Larry's just got the veteranship and the know-how to do it. But Jaxson has the physical ability to be able to do those things. So those are the things that frustrate you with him when you don't see it consistently out of him. Those are the things you're like, man, now he can do that. Why won't he do that all the time?
Right. Yeah.
So that's the thing that gets to you. So you hope those guys can find that consistency about them. Trey, they need Trey Murphy. Yeah. He's the bona fide 3-point shooting threat on this team.
Yeah, when people talk about how we need spacing, and on paper we have it with Trey. It just hasn't been falling.
And I mean, and the thing is, his coaches and his teammates are like begging him to shoot. Hey man, take more. Hey, shoot it from there. Yeah, it's deep, but take that shot. He's got to be more confident in himself in those situations. Now I understand, and he made a nice move off the bounce the other night when he punched one. Because they're going to press him at the 3-point line. Yeah. They're not just going to give it to him. But a lot of times he's open enough for that shot to where he can take that shot. And they've got to have him taking those shots. And they've got to have him make some of them, of course, because you're going to have to make that defense extend. It makes life easier for your teammates.
JD, one of the reasons why we love having you back is just talking basketball in general. And it's funny, I was off yesterday, and it seems like the amount of news that happened in the NBA and specifically in the West in the last 24 to 48 hours is incredible. I mean, the conversation has changed every day or every couple days lately in terms of what the Pelicans' goals should be, what's realistic as far as them in the standings. But, I mean, based on the million different things that have happened just this week, I mean, how do you look at the Pelicans' situation as far as what they should be targeting or what you're trying to look at as far as like what should the goal be right now in terms of where they finish, for example?
See, I still feel they can finish. They're in great position to get to a 6th spot. Now, I take the play in, of course. You just want to get in and then you take a chance.
Yeah, right.
But I feel like they can get to a 6th spot. I feel like the schedule is conducive to that now. You don't just necessarily say, hey, you're going to beat a team, but look, they got back-to-back with Houston now. Come on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
they're not even trying anymore.
Yeah, you feel like the schedule's conducive. You feel like these guys, I think, from last year's experience, understand the ramped-up intensity that you need down the stretch. So I feel pretty confident, and I feel pretty good that they can make a move up the standings. And plus, every time you win now, you're probably playing somebody who's right around you in the standings, so you can make significant movement really easily. Mm-hmm. When you got OKC and Portland coming up and the Lakers coming up, that's easily, if you win those games, easily time to jump from 10 to 8, 7, 6. Yeah. I mean, really easy. So hopefully they're looking at that, and you don't want to look too far ahead, but these guys have to understand they're in a really good position right now. Now you got to take care of your business. You got to win your games. You can't, you look at the standings and you look at what's happening this team's playing that team. That don't mean nothing if you don't win.
Sure.
You got to win your game. So they were in a good position to where if they just handle their business, I think they can get out of that play-in situation and get right into it.
A lot of people on Wednesday before the game around here came up to me and said, how many games do you think they need to win of the last 16, or how many do you think they're going to win? And I said, I cannot wrap my head around 16 games. Yeah. But I can go as far as they have a 4-game homestand, which got off to a great start by beating the Mavs, and then they have the 4-game set after that where it's 2 Houston, San Antonio, Charlotte, which are 4 teams that are at the bottom of the standings. Yeah. So I've been looking at this the whole time, or at least going back a little ways, maybe a week or 2 or so, at where can they be after this stretch of 8 games, which they're 1-0 right now. As Joe talked about earlier in the show, how the schedule definitely gets tougher later because you have that 4-game West Coast trip, or Western Conference trip anyways. Yeah. But, I mean, can they put themselves in a lot better position by the time that they play Rockets twice, Spurs once, Hornets once? At that point, like you said, JD, they could, if they move up ahead of a bunch of other teams in the West and they're in, 6th, 7th, you're looking at, okay, now you could, not that we want to see this, but you could afford to lose a little bit on that trip.
But you might be getting Zion back around that time, too.
Right.
Which is that meaty stretch, or that tough stretch is right when you need him most.
Yeah, you got to store something in the bank. You can't be, break even in this stretch where we're talking about this 4-game homestand, and then we're talking about Houston and those games. You can't be like treading water here.
Sure.
You got to make your move right here, because you got to have something in the bank, because the stormy days are coming. Mm-hmm. And just in case the storm catches you, you need something to be able to fall back on, which, think about it now. In hindsight, there were the Stallet days at 23 and 12 start, but they built up enough to where at least they're still in 10th right now, as opposed to being in, out of it in 13th or whatever. Sure. So, you build up a little bit of equity, you keep that, and, you don't want to lose, but if you have a slip, you can weather it because you got a little something.
Yeah, I mean, the West is crazy right now. We don't want to slip, as we were talking about, but, I mean, the Grizzlies are dealing with the Ja situation. Brandon Clark's out. Looks like Steven Adams is going to be out for the rest of the season. You got the Suns dealing with Kevin Durant and his injury. You got Luka dealing with his injury. You got the constantly hobbled L.A. Lakers, as long as they have AD on the roster, and LeBron's dealing with his own thing. And, man, you look at the West, and as you said, it's shaky. And so it just seems like if you make your bones here, and then you see that buffet at Houston and whatnot, it's just such a sweet stretch for us.
It's funny too, because I think this is a longer conversation, but something that I've harped on all season, that some of the teams that haven't shown a lot of urgency throughout the year, as far as like sitting guys when the schedule called for it. How many teams in the West right now are looking at the standings and saying, like, man, we could really use like 2 or 3 more wins than we have right now. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it now. But I honestly think that Denver and maybe Sacramento are the only – there might be another team that I'm forgetting. The only – of the teams in the top 12, 13, those might be the only 2 teams that are looking at the standings right now and saying, we're good where we are. We won plenty of games. We've gotten everything we could out of this season. But I think for everybody else, it's so hard to not go back and look at like – the game that the Pelicans lost to the Lakers, where Matt Ryan made the miracle 3. Sorry to bring that up again. Yeah.
But luckily, Graf won't hear this.
Just one example. I just think this is the best example I've ever seen of a regular season where most of the teams have about 15 games left, and you're like, man, just a couple wins could have put you, if you're in 8th right now, you could be in 4th if you had won 2 more games. But I think it's going to make for such a fun final 4-ish weeks of the regular season, because some of these games have so much importance.
Yeah, we were in 12th not that long ago. We were out of it a few days ago,
Look, some of the teams in front of you are going to lose, because this is a really, really volatile situation. I mean, you got teams who are jockeying for position, playing one another.
Yes.
And it means something. The only team that might be able to exhale a little bit is Denver, which seems like they've got no, interest in exhaling.
Right.
But everybody else is like, I like to call it a knife fight, man. This is up close and personal. This ain't from a distance. This is, we're up on each other, and we got to go at it and, see who survives this. And that's, it's great as a fan to have all these games like that, because they mean something. Because, think about all the NBA seasons in the past where you get to this point
Yeah.
And you've got a ton of
still
teams.
games.
Yeah, you got a ton of teams not caring, and the games mean nothing, and they're just going through the motions. And now you're in this play-in situation. It's like, was it a couple of years ago where LeBron was like, whoever came up with this, they ought to be, fired or whatever.
Yes, it was.
And then his ass wanted to
point.
get in. So, that's the way it goes because, it's playoff basketball. You can call it whatever you want to, but once you get in the dance, however you get in, then you take your chances. So, I like this format.
Me too. I love it. It's just like a little Plinko ball. It's another little joker in the deck, and it's fun. JD, man, we're so glad to have you back on the call, and we're going to see you tomorrow night against that pesky Thunder who's nipping at our heels. So we got to hope to keep them in their place, and then hopefully keep the Trailblazers in their place, and then hopefully put the Lakers in their place, man. It's going to be a fun stretch with you.
Yeah, I'm glad, man. I came back at the right time, 4 straight home games and 4 meaningful home games. So I'm looking forward to it. Really, I don't want to project ahead, so I ain't even going to say what I'm thinking, but I'm looking forward to the Pelicans really putting their best forward because they have to, and because these are teams they need to beat. They need to beat these teams.
Absolutely. So do it for JD Pelicans. He will be on every home radio broadcast. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Thank you.
Huge thanks to Mr. John DeShazier. Always a ray of sunshine when we need him most. And man, I am feeling bright. Look, man, we're hoping for the best with B.I.'s ankle. Our own Aaron Summers actually had the report that he was sort of waving off trainers when they tried to go to him. He was actually hopping on it in the tunnel, so it doesn't seem like it's too bad. Let's hope that he can roll with it. 2 days off has been helpful. Fingers crossed. Man, it's going to get interesting down this stretch here. Am I the only one finding myself enjoying the Dylan Brooks heel turn? I don't know if it's just because it's directed at Draymond Green. I don't know if it's because everything is wrestling now and I don't take anything seriously. But man, it's just been so hilarious between the pictures and the GIFs of him and Draymond, the interviews with both of them.
Yep.
I'm enjoying it. As an outsider, as a non-fan of either fan base, it's fun.
You know what's funny, too? With some of these guys being close to the limit for how many technical fouls they have before they get suspended, the Dylan Brooks, I think it was Draymond putting the ball in Dylan Brooks' face last night, and both of them being...
Dylan Brooks like he was trying to kiss him or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was intimidation, but sweet.
It reminded me, this is going to be an old school analogy, but stick with me. Do you remember in the Rocky fight where at the end they punch each other and they both fall on the mat and the ref is counting them out? It reminded me of that because it's like all of these instances where these guys that are close to the technical foul limit, we want them to all play each other, all get technical fouls, all get suspended for the rest of the season.
Get out of here.
Let's have all these. There was the incident between Luka and Devin Booker that caused a technical foul on Luka. Yep. I'm all for it. I think people are. I know who was it?
Fred VanVleet had his little rant recently, too, about his text.
Oh, it was Devin Booker talked about how people complain about how the players are too nice to each other and they're all friends.
You got smoke.
So I love the idea of, like, let's bring all the smoke, especially these guys these other teams in the West where they have 15 technical fouls.
Yes.
Let's have a steel cage match where all of them get technical fouls.
The tech dough. And just have them play it out, man.
Yes, so I'm all for it. Not just because I like to see the intensity, but I want to see as many players get suspended that are key as possible.
See, Jim needs to run a network because these are the big ideas that people are missing,
Yes.
And look, it's been interesting to see the networks trying cool stuff. ESPN for the last game against the Mavs, they had an all-women broadcast, and that was for International Women's Day. And we were going to do something for it on Wednesday, but who wants to hear two dudes who are so generic? If you just Google dudes, Jim and I's picture comes up.
Speak for yourself, Joe. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's true. Jim has the throngs. But, it's just, we felt that would be weird. But it was great to see Aaron Summers out there, talking to Doris Burke, Cassidy Hubbard, and Beth Mowens. Catch that interview. It's out there on social media. And look, we were sort of talking about it earlier. Everyone's sort of getting hobbled now. Zion maybe back in 2 weeks because at the end of March, this schedule is the meaty part. This is where we need to make our end of this month gets a little rough because that ends with the Clippers. And then you start playing you play the Trailblazers again.
All on the road that stretch too.
Yep. And so it's going to get a little tough, but that's right around the time that you may get some good injury report news. Again, fingers crossed. This is the part of the schedule where we will see what we're made of. Jim, man, great gym interviews and a gym exclusive. What did the people do to deserve this?
Well, thank you, Joe. And I think, honestly, the best part of that development was that it's easier to do those after a victory. So
yeah.
I can't make any promises, but I hope to have more gym exclusives and gym interviews on Monday's show when we return to the podcast after what promises to be a very important weekend. And hopefully after the Portland game, there will be more to talk about in the locker room after that.
Absolutely.
Win.
Well, I think I speak for all the Eichenhofer heads when I say that I hope that we get more of that. Hey, also check out the Spanish broadcast. We now have a home Spanish broadcast on Tropical 105.7. Mario Jerez, Juan Carlos Ramos on the call. They bring a lot of energy to the call. So great for our Spanish-speaking community to be able to catch the home games on the radio here. Jim, let's go, man. I am ready for the home stretch, and tomorrow against Oklahoma City, I'm ready to roll, man. Are your loins girded? I've girded my loins.
They are very girded and ready to go. I mean,
Yes.
this is huge. This is a big weekend. We'll see what happens with the Thunder. I think Portland went into the season saying, at the minimum, we have to make the play-in tournament. Not so sure that OKC had that in mind, but now that they're here, these are important games for them as well.
Yeah.
So this should be really good. I think there'll be a ton of intensity. Might not be playoff level, but I think it's going to be pretty darn close, especially if Wednesday was any indication of what's in store the rest of the way.
Thunder is dangerous. They remind me a lot of us. And then you're facing the Portland Trailblazers, who look like they're out of it now. They're sitting 13th, but Damian Lillard always makes them a contender, and unfortunately, we play them a bunch of times down the stretch. And then they're sitting ninth, right above us. In case you didn't notice, I haven't been thinking about it at all at night. So we're finishing out the homestand there.
Yes.
So let's go, man. I'm ready to roll, and I'm just glad that we get to have you in studio pre and post game for some of these radio calls, because man, it's just great to have Jim just around. I think all of you can agree.
Well, thank you. I look forward to that as well. We got a little bit of a later one Saturday night, but I'm looking forward to joining you guys in the studio as well, and hopefully we'll have some good things to talk about.
Absolutely. So caffeinate and join us, people. We are the Pelicans Podcast, presented by SeatGeek. Big thank you to Mr. John DeShazier, Mr. Dyson Daniels, and Trey Murphy for joining Jim here and the podcast. Thank you for listening. Tell your friends and pals. Give us a little rating. We enjoy that stuff. We will talk to you once again on Monday. And until then...
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, presented by SeatGeek. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, presented by SeatGeek.
I love how you hyped it up so much as it was me.